All right, Andrew Cameron, call myself. Over to you, mate.
We'll kick it off. All right,
Yeah.
beauty. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in, which will be an interesting online sharing and knowledge experience. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're on here, the land we'll be talking about, which is on Bundjalung country, close to the Gudjimburra clan region up in the Northern Rivers. So I'd like to pay our respects to that. It's a very important part of our context and our journey to acknowledge the great work that they did as custodians, and we endeavour to do a much better job as custodians going forward into the future. So looking after biodiversity, soil, and all those things is obviously a huge part of that. So how this came to be, my current role is with Byron Shire Council as the Agricultural Extension Officer. It's quite a unique role in being a support for our local farmers and landholders, helping increase agricultural production in the most sustainable way possible. So referring to regenerative agricultural practices, which is something I've been I'll just try and mute some of the, someone's got some noise there. If you can mute your recorders, that'd be great. So I've been involved in regenerative ag for about sort of 10 years now, setting up and running small scale regenerative farms in the Northern Rivers region, mostly animal systems, poultry for eggs, poultry for meat, grass-fed and finished regeneratively farmed beef. I've set up sort of providor. I've been in providor type roles, working very closely with other farmers to help push their regeneratively farmed produce to market. So I've been quite heavily involved in farming the best food possible in the best way possible. I'm involved in local farmers markets here, dealt with a lot of different restaurants and so forth. So I wasn't really in the plan to be in a local government role, but this is a unique role that popped up. And I'm really passionate about trying to do the best with regenerative agriculture and bring that to the forum in our local community. And with any luck, other regions will take on, I guess, such a role, or really start pushing this way of looking after ecology first and recognizing that that's really how we have to do things in the future. So I'm really interested in biodiversity as a part of that. It's incredibly important. Without that, we don't survive or produce quality food. So that's obviously a very important part of the farming journey, and very much part of this property that we're on now. So this is we've only been on here about 8 or 9 months, so still very new, and to this property, still observation foremost. I've always believed in that first couple of years is observing, and that's really where we're at the moment. Observing this property, developing a plan for how we'll manage this and what we'll do with it. Whilst I work with the council role, so this is a unique opportunity, I guess, to share a part of, or use our own property, I guess, as a learning opportunity for everyone here to give this live opportunity, which is going to be a great way, I think, for everyone else to get an understanding of what the process is with Regen Farmers Mutual, including myself. I'm probably as clueless as most of you guys are. So it'll be a great learning experience for all of us. And I think it's great that we'll be able to share this knowledge in this way, so you as landholders can make more effective decisions. This will be a massive part for our own personal decision making in terms of what we do, how we do it. And as I said, we're in that stage of observing and learning this land for ourselves, and it's probably one of the hardest years to do it, given that we've had probably one of the hardest 6 months most farmers that I know of and the older farmers have ever seen, with record floods and record amounts of rain. To give that context, we had about 900 mil over 24 hours during the floods. So you can imagine what that does to an area. A lot of bridges gone and creeks eroded and a whole bunch of things. So it's very interesting to see that first up is quite Well, I would say opportunistic because it gives us an opportunity to really plan for what's coming into the future. So as traumatic and crazy and as it was, there was that, but also 6 months of a lot of rain. I think we'll be close to 3 meters for the year already, with a usual average of 1,800 mil. So we're nearly double what we get in 1 year, which is yeah, it's scary. And you know, how do we manage that going forward? What do we do? Certain trees, we're on an avocado orchard. There's 80 trees that we're looking to renovate. A lot of it's got Phytophthora after the season we've had. So, you know, it's one of those things where you look at how will this crop handle going into the future? What do we do? Do we continue that particular crop? Will it handle this type of wet if it's more consistent? So these are all the things we're presented with, I guess, as land managers, as decision makers going forward, and how we build a more resilient system, or just being out there saying, okay, well, natives is obviously something that has to be incorporated that can handle this kind of, I guess, dramatic weather events. So that's, I guess, where we're at with our place, and it's going to be interesting to get an idea of how biodiversity carbon story fits into our picture. We have a creek running through our property. We have a spring which we draw water from for our drinking. We're very fortunate in that. We have platypus and turtles in our dam. Thankfully, they appeared again just last week. I hadn't seen them for about 3 or 4 months. I was wondering if the floods took them away, but they're still there, which is good. And hopefully they'll stay there, especially if our neighbours upstream hopefully think along the same lines of us, to look after things and be better custodians. And that's really what it's about. It's a big thing of what I'm trying to build within the role at council, is build that notion of custodianship into our culture, which I think we lost, or maybe we never had it. But it's where we have to go in future. We don't own this land. We own the right to look after it. We own the responsibility to make it better. That's the way we see it. So I guess to give you an idea of context, which I've studied a lot of holistic management. That's what I apply a lot of that to my farming practice. And recently I've been doing the Rigurians course with Darren Doherty, which is a great learning experience and some great tools. So part of that is creating a statement of purpose. So I thought for this, I'd just share that with you to give some context of what we're trying to achieve here for us as a growing family, or want to be growing family. And that is to create a place of harmonious production for our life as a happy, healthy family. And that's what we're trying to create here as this piece of land. And I guess this and biodiversity and this project may become part of that.
Andrew, that's brilliant. Thank you. I'll be so rude as to take over from here, if that's all right.
No worries. Yes, I could just ramble along otherwise.
Well, I'm aware that we do have a lot of people that we need to take through quite a lot of stuff as passengers on our journey. But what you've just talked through is really interesting. So for those that are following online, I'd just like to bring up my screen, if it's all right with everybody. And I'll just bring you up to speed, if it's all right. So what we're doing with Andrew today, very kindly, as he's explained, is volunteering to do his environmental farm assessment out in the open. So what we're really trying to do is use this as an opportunity to educate Andrew, who's obviously an influencer within his community, but also to educate others that might be interested in how an environmental farm assessment works and what's involved. So Andrew has fortunately been able to talk to us, but what he did to get to this point was he went to the website, he clicked on the button, get started, He went through like an online purchasing process to buy the environmental farm assessment. And when he did, he was signing up to the constitution of the mutual, and embedded in the constitution of the mutual are these principles. And so this is, you know, to get to this point where Andrew is getting an environmental farm assessment, he's also become a member of Regen Farmers Mutual. And as such, a landscape agronomist has been assigned to him. And in that case, that landscape agronomist today is myself, as Andrew Ward, but we've got now a network of over a dozen recognised landscape agronomists, with more coming on. And the role of a landscape agronomist is to become a sort of trusted advisor. Now, we know that there's traditional agronomists in the food and fibre market, and we know there are emerging markets in environmental markets and, you know, production benefits that can come from regen ag, and there's going to be emerging green provenance and other compliance markets. And so merging these environmental markets and the opportunities inherent in them with traditional agronomy and bringing that together is the role of a landscape agronomist. And their role is to help that farmer initially with their farm assessment, but then to collect the data that they need in order to support their decision making, and ultimately make a farm plan and use that combined information of their knowledge of their context plus the landscape agronomist's knowledge of the environmental markets. And the other thing that I've done is take a look before this at the NRM plan of a particular member. As a landscape agronomist, it's good to understand the context of a particular farmer. And so that's what we've done today. So if it's all good, I'm going to switch over to you, Andrew, and I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. And we're going to go into your survey. So if you can see on screen where the point of bringing each of the digital twins to life, we want to populate them with data once, so that when you're filling in or when you're needing reference information, if you've already put it in, you don't have to continually put it in over and over again. And so some of these questions will be, you know, specific, but most of them are vague. And any that are specific and personal, like your location details, we've already removed. But for anybody watching, you know, we need to get things like name, address, ABN, those sorts of things. Andrew Cameron and I have already done that. So, Andrew, in relation to your farm, and many of these can apply, but do any of these stand out for you? Yep.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I think a lot of them do for sure, because of in that planning side. So, you know, increasing sales, I mean, right now we're not a productive farm. There is a chance of that, but accessing new markets, I think definitely, because we're a small scale farm and that's just relevant. You know, better communication, marketing, buyers, sure. I mean, thankfully I've got a marketing background, so that helps with this sort of stuff. Learning new methods, ecosystem service, yes. Carbon markets, it hasn't been on my radar. We're not, you know, we're not pasture based, and I know that's the way I'd want to do that if I was doing carbon. But yeah, the better understanding of data for sure. Comparing farm to others, productivity, soil health, yes. Data discipline, I mean, that's probably not so relevant. I think it'll be small scale. Reducing risk via flood, definitely. There's been, especially floods, been on our mind, obviously. Lowering costs, yes. Not really increasing farm valuation. Certifications, I wouldn't really put that on there. That's covered. Nutrient density, yes. That's hugely important going into future producing food. Biodiversity, yes. Product quality, yes. Animal welfare, yes. Sharing equipment, that's not a huge one. My neighbour's already broken my trailer. um, which happens. Community, yes, definitely. This, part of this journey will be sharing what we learn, what we can share with us. Research on and off farm, yes. Co-hosting events, yes. Volunteering and work opportunities, yes. Farm support opportunities, yes. I mean, yeah, look, all that applies, I'd say.
No, it doesn't quite have an all that applies, but
Almost.
that's great.
No.
And you're not alone, I've got to say. Some of the most generous regen farmers that I know are like, yes, 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 yes. And it comes to sharing equipment, and they're like, nah, can't. The way my neighbor deals with his, So maybe at the moment you're not commercial to wholesale or direct to consumer.
No.
That I think it's one of these two that you're ultimately heading towards, is it?
Yeah, it'll be, well, direct to consumer, I think, at a small scale, for what we're doing. I mean, that's the reason I think why the Abo stopped here 20 years ago, was he was a commercial wholesale, and it just took one bad customer to end the operation. And, that's a lesson for all small farmers, I think. But it's direct to consumer is a model that we believe in. We believe in, it's about feeding the community first. But in education and
and education. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if there's more of those.
And then how's your land used?
The moment, well, I guess native habitat is a big one. It's, most of it's probably 50 to 60% native forest out there, with a lot of camper through there, obviously, orchard, and that's really it. Native habitat and orchard.
Yeah. Okay. And the products will be avocado?
Yes. Yeah, I always get it wrong too.
And anything else I think I've seen a few photos of yourself with some cattle. Are they on your property, or?
Yeah, that's not this property. No, that's a previous business. Yeah, so I've managed other farms with cattle. Look, there might be native Davidson plums, might be something to put in there, and the good rainforest food that, yeah, I'd put native. Yeah.
All right.
Go into the planning.
And that'll all end up being
value-add
as direct to consumer, I'm assuming. So we can come back to this. Anything with a red asterisk is required, but you can come back and edit your profile at any point from within your twin. So how much land are we talking about?
It's about a hectare. So it's like, 1 hectare is the orchard at the moment. That will be, so it's not huge.
And is any of your land leased, share farmed, pastoral lease, in native title? None of the above?
None of the above.
Yeah. Today, do you have any certifications in place? And the sorts of certifications might be EOV certification or but there's animal welfare.
Yeah, we don't have any of that as yet. We may head to a certified organic. That's but for the moment, no.
Do you want any certifications? So you just mentioned organic.
Yeah, that's one we'd be considering.
Yeah.
We're eyeing off the idea of avocado oil as a value-add, unique product.
That's pretty
cool.
Makes
sense to certify, we do that.
Yeah,
we can add all sorts of things into that too. Grow different things to add into that.
That's the first time I've heard of that value-added product from any of our farmers.
Yeah.
Do you have any active management plans in place, and the sorts of plans, carbon plans, habitat plans, conservation plans, soil and water, any of those?
No, I mean, not as a formalized plan. Definitely, obviously, the intention, but at the moment.
And if you were wanting plans, what plans would you be interested in?
Well, holistic whole farm plan, which is I'm kind of in the process of doing that. Integrated pest management as well. They would be the two there that popped up.
Okay.
Conservation plan, not so much. Nutrient management plan.
That's
I've put
usually
that in there.
runoff of water nutrient, but I think what you're
Oh, okay.
nutrient
No,
density,
I'm thinking
nutritional. Yeah,
density of the food. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas
Yeah.
nutrient management's sort of like phosphorus or nitrogen running off into the you know, the catchment and then on.
Oh, right. Which wouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
Well,
And look, those
is it-
phosphorus manageable potentially.
yeah.
I mean, I've only just sent away our soils recently, so I haven't got those results.
Maybe a soil and water
But yes,
conservation, because that'd
and
fit.
soil health management plan,
Yeah.
100%. That's the first step, really. Even, I mean, look, there's tons of pruning that needs to be done out there, really old trees, but soil health is the first thing off the rank.
Great. How are you doing farm management records? Pen, paper, I mean, everybody does some in their head, but
Yeah,
majority.
yeah, sure. Oh, look, pen, paper, yes, and spreadsheets, plenty of that, and obviously in there. But that's, I mean, if I showed you around my little office here, there's calendars and post-it notes everywhere.
Is there any farm management software like I imagine you're not using Maya or Agronomy or any of those sorts of softwares as such?
No, I don't see that we would here. So, yeah.
Mate,
Oh, no.
motivations for farming.
Oh, change the world.
Save the world. Good job.
Oh, that's in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it all started, I guess. I guess I always sort of joke, just try and change the world one farm at a time. But look, be productive, love nature, a family farm. It's a holistic thing, really, isn't it? It's creating a happy, healthy, productive life.
That's pretty cool. We're nearly done. I know this can be quite frustrating getting interrogated, and you've got the bonus of having people watch you.
People watching.
Yeah. How are you going so far? Good, not clear, frustrated, other emotion?
No, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I think that's all clear. You mean with this? Yeah.
This process so far. All
this
right.
process, not in life.
in life, we might need another
we're
session.
not getting that.
This is more of a spectrum, this question. So at the bottom end of the spectrum, no idea, right the way through to at the top of the spectrum being, have generated and sold accus.
Oh, yeah.
Where would you place your level of knowledge on that spectrum?
I guess basic understanding. I mean, I have, I'd say basic understanding. I mean, I've sort of looked in a lot of the carbon stuff, but that's all soil based, for grazing type of things. I haven't gone down all these other parts. It's quite versed in.
All right. Well, do you happen to know?
Lock in basic.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah, basic's good.
Basic's fine. Yeah. Do you know the Indigenous country you're on?
We're in Bundjalung.
Can you spell that
I'll
for me?
stick with that because I wrote it down. So just to be sure. BUNDGALUNG. Oh, thank you, Hope. Good, I got it
right. Would you like to be connected with local Indigenous elders in your region? Yes or no?
Yes, that's part of the plan. Yeah, we've got the Tweed Byron Aboriginal Land Council here, which I'm yet to engage with for this particular property.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much to learn from the civilization that's been here for 65,000 years,
Yeah, there is.
Do you identify as Indigenous, Aboriginal?
No.
Your NRM region is New South Wales North Coast, and your land care group, are you involved in a land care group?
There is no, not the local. Yeah, well, Tweed Landcare. So yeah, somewhat involved. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
But
And
I
then
am a member. And
you've got a few affiliations. So you're the Byron Shire Regen Network. What do you call it?
yeah, it's you just put ag officer, I guess, is probably the best through that. And through that, obviously, I'm dealing with a lot of, land care groups, community farming groups, food groups, different things. I've got a pretty extensive farming network just through being a local farmer in there in the last 8-10 years.
All right. And
which is fortunate.
mate, we might do this one later so you don't have to do that in public, but so that you can get paid and all of those sorts of things, your twin will need your BSB and account number.
Sure.
So one little concept to understand about the digital twin that we're building through this environmental farm assessment is that it's your data store. As you'll see by the end of this, you'll be able to drive your own piece of software that is a reflection of your real farm in digital terms. But you don't exist as an island. You actually exist within a context of the environment. You exist within your catchment. You exist within a bunch of neighbors. So the way that we work at Regen Digital is everything that's yours in your data store, but anything you want to share with the collective group happens in this software called Hilo. So as we're setting up the twin, we're also going to set up part of your Hilo integration. So we need consent that we can display, for example, the boundary of your property in relation to that group. Now that group will be distinctly the North Coast New South Wales group, but you would then have in the Hilo, anybody else who's a member, if you've said you consent to display, they can then see there is other members of Regen Farmers Mutual in the North Coast group. So
Yep.
Yep. Now they can't get into your data store, but they can.
But they can see, and you can sort of communicate with them if you want, or you're on the similar path to me. Let's talk.
Yeah. Now, which email is the
Ian Cameron?
Yeah.
Yep. At byron.nsw.gov.au.
Excellent. Okay. And next. So you have a purpose. I didn't get to write it all down. I've got to create a place of harmonious production, but then I kind of ran out. Could you repeat your purpose for me?
Yes. So create a place of harmonious production for our life as a happy, healthy family.
Is that it?
Do that? I'm not sure. Yeah, that's.
Now, do you want a public description of your operation, small avocado farm, or any description? They'll currently see a boundary, but no description unless you put one in.
I'll just say, small scale avocados. That'll do for the moment.
I really got to be a better typer to be a better landscape agronomist. Now, this is the location privacy. How precisely do you want to show your location? Show my address and location on the map. Just share my region or town and show the operation's general location, or just share the region, town the operation is.
I think just share the region, town at the moment.
Yep. And what I'm putting on screen now is just, we're about to submit your profiles into your twin. But I just want to match off that all the red asterisks, which are compulsory bits of information,
Yeah.
have a green tick next to them.
Yeah.
And so far, so good.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we're going to submit that. Now, just make sure that it goes to the right. New South Wales, North Coast. And this is the exciting part. Ding. All right. So,
Okay.
Andrew, I can also introduce you to your digital twin. So for what you will be able to see here in settings, we might just need to refresh. Is it going to pick it up? All the information that you've just added via that survey is now in your digital twin. But think of a digital twin as like, have you ever built a website before? Like got a WordPress website or a Weebly or a Wix or something? And when you get one of those, initially they're blank and they say, welcome to the world, you've got a website. But it's not until you put your content in there and you put your pictures in there and you decide whether you're going to have a blog or you decide whether you're going to have an online shop or a gallery, that you really personalize that website to become your own. And so the rest of this little session that we're going to go through is about taking your own website, your own secure data store, and personalize into your very own like digital twin, essentially. So in order to do that, the first thing that we want to do is define the location of your digital twin and get the legal boundary. Now, because we had a session before and we don't want to kind of disclose your address to 80 people here and however many might watch the recording later, we've actually got your cadastral boundary from before, so I'm just going to upload that. But I wanted to show how we do that. So what we're doing really to create your twin is starting to create a map or an inventory of the assets. And so the first asset that we'll be interested in is this legal boundary, which applies to the whole property. Now, we're going to go and grab, with every asset, I should say, you know, there's a number of things that you can add to qualify those assets, any statuses, any flags, any notes that you want. Assets can belong to a hierarchy. So you might have the farm as the main asset, the legal boundary, but within that, several paddocks. And within a paddock, you might have a greenhouse. Within a greenhouse, you might have several benches or rows. And so you can have parents or a hierarchy of assets as much as or as little as you wish. At the moment, we're just looking at pretty gross assets, like what are your water, your physical, your land-based assets. So not as required for managing environmental assets as it might be if you were managing your enterprise. ID tags, similarly, you might find this for if you're looking at each animal and they've got an NDLIS tag, right? Then you will link that tag. If you're loading up an asset and you want to add an image to it, then that makes sense as well. Or you can import files or add files to it. So, Andrew, we got your cadastral before. So we're going to bring that up to your twin. We're going to import the geometry from that KML. We're just going to save that as the first asset, the legal boundary. Now, while we were getting your legal boundary, we also were able to get the house boundary. So there'll be some structures that we're able to import that are on record. And these will be buildings. And these won't necessarily be all of the buildings, but they're the ones that are on record with your with the lands office. And that doesn't mean they're always up to date, but it's usually pretty handy. And as you can see, the lands record doesn't necessarily reflect reality. So you can see they think your shed's there, but in reality, it's the same footprint, but to the left. Yeah.
But we don't live in the shed either.
So, mate, what we've done just very quickly to take you into your farm, we've got two assets listed here. One is the legal boundary and the other one is that structure. And we can continue to add assets until we've mapped the assets of your farm. So why don't we start getting you used to mapping assets? And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to give you the keys to your twin. So at the moment, what's written here as Andrew Cameron is actually Andrew Ward. And what I need to do is add you. And so, Andrew, I think we were using another email address for your twin, not the Byron. Do you remember?
Yeah, so do Andrew Cameron 117 at gmail.com.
Yeah, and we'll make that email your username as well. And for now, we'll give you a password. You'll be prompted to change. You'll be prompted to change this when you log in. And we're going to give you top roles. Now, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. If Andrew, you want to bring, before you share, go into your email and check that you've got that invitation. And then I'll ask you to log in and change your password to something that you know without sharing it to everybody else before you share screen again. And then when you're sharing screen, I'm going to show you how to map your assets. Now, while Andrew's doing his bit of work there, we've got a sort of natural break for a minute here while he's going through a login process. Are there any burning questions from people at this point? Rowan, you've been minding the chat. Has anybody had a question?
No questions today, Andrew. We haven't asked, I suppose. So that was a good time. And feel free to drop it in the chat as well. We can.
Andrew, nothing's come through just yet. Did we get that right? Andrew Cameron 117 at Gmail.
Right. 117 at Gmail. I mean, I think I put the language right. Anybody got a question while we're...
Got a welcome to Hilo. Is that what I'm going into?
No, that's been generated through the twin. What I'm going to do is, Andrew Cameron, I'm going to just text you directly the password. Yeah.
I'll get my other phone. Hang on. I'll be back in a second.
Oh, when I say
Woody, so Peter Munns has pointed out, be interested to see how easy it is to add internal fencing and water assets. I'm guessing that's what.
This is coming up, Peter. So great question. When we're talking about land assets, you know, we're usually creating a paddock, which basically shows you the fence lines. But if the fence itself is an asset, like horse fences compared to electric fences, you know, then you can actually define the fence as a structure asset as well, not just a land asset by which it bounds. So Andrew Cameron, if you check the message,
Yeah.
you'll see.
Yes, I've got that.
And
so I log into Regen Mutual, Regen
Oh.
Farmers Mutual. Sorry.
no, sorry, my bad. Let me work on the next thing, which you want is check that URL I just sent you.
Sure.
Click on that, and it'll ask you for a username and password. Yeah.
So something for later, Woody. From Jason John, can the data be exported and backed up?
Yes, absolutely. So this is all open source software. You could take your data store and host it on your own computer at home. It is your data. That's one of the whole sensitivities of Regen Farmers Mutual, is it's your data store. At the moment, you know, I'm permissioned into Andrew Cameron's data store to help him. But by the end of this session, I'll remove my account admin access and he'll be left with the account admin access. And then he can determine what he shares and with whom and under what sort of conditions he wants to share that. So absolutely his data. In terms of the value of hosting it with Regen Digital is, though, we're building tools constantly to help you, you know, better map your assets, better understand the value of them in order to verify those assets or transact those assets. So it's our network that and software integrations that can add value to your data store, which is why you're with hopefully Regen Farmers Mutual. But you could pick it up and take it over to your own or an equivalent network. Yeah.
And Kirsten's asking, can you get it in a CSV or similar, or would you need to set up an instance to access your data outside our hosted server?
You know, I genuinely don't know. I don't know if you can get a CSV of all of these different file types, because some of them will be maps and some of them will be other asset types that might not export as a CSV. But potentially, Rowan, you're technically probably more savvy than me on that front.
It's a good question. So don't worry, longer chat for another time.
Yeah.
So the way it currently works is we would arrange a download of the data, the database, and the database would be some data points, and as Woody talks to, some kind of map assets and what have you. Yeah, I don't know whether that comes as a CSV though, ultimately, or what form the database, or whether it's all JSON files. But yes, we're happy to chat when we have more information, Kirsten.
Andrew Cameron, are you in on your twin?
All right. Yes, I'm in the twin. I've changed the password, I believe, and now I'm in.
All right, what I'll get you to do is share your screen if you could, and I'm going to teach you to drive your twin.
Okay, so people should see that now. Okay.
Good stuff. All right. So look, while we're here, if you go back to that people page, and if you can click on Andrew Ward and just keep me as a manager so that I can, or look on the green hyperlink, which is my name. Yep. Log in there, and then it'll give roles. So you want to probably change my role from account admin to just being manager. So account admin is the highest level on your twin.
Right.
So
Yep.
if you want to the capacity to add other people is reserved for account admin. So you are now in charge of who you let into your digital twin. Okay.
Digital world.
Yeah. So
Okay.
at the moment, I'm still in there so that I can assist you, of course, and do
Yes.
the rest of this environmental farm assessment. But this is your
So-
asset. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Now we tend to use a few of these left-hand side menu items more than the others. So if you go up to the dashboard, which can be accessed by clicking on the Regen logo. Yep, perfect.
Yep.
At the dashboard, you can see your map. It takes you directly to
Yeah.
your farm.
Okay.
Now,
Yep.
listed below that is upcoming tasks. So we haven't scheduled any activities for you yet. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll see there's logs, late tasks. So any tasks that you've set yourself or activities that you set yourself that need to be actioned will appear there. On the right-hand side, you've got the
Yeah.
quantity of different asset types laid out for you. So the land has 2 assets and one structure asset, and currently no logs, which are logs of activities or inputs or outputs that you've had. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, that's to be expected. That's the reason for doing the environmental farm assessment, to give you some sort of context. So you mentioned a few areas, few assets when you were chatting. One was the avocado orchard. Another was the
Yep.
creek. Another again was the
Yep.
spring. And I guess let's start with those 3. So let's define the avocado orchard. So over on records, if you on the far left-hand side, you were there earlier. Assets, and you go down to land asset. Yep.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is call this on the top right-hand side is an add land asset button now. And you'll find that the best UX, hit that. The best way to navigate is from records, select the asset, top right-hand corner, big green button. And it same goes for activities and observations. So yeah, avocado orchard or avocado trees or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And this might be a paddock rather than the whole property, or so see the next question on land type.
Yes.
Yep. It's compulsory.
Paddock, I suppose.
Yep.
Yep.
And then you can add any
Field.
notes or field. Yep. You can add any notes to that, like not in production or have Phytophthora or whatever the notes that you think are relevant. You can take
needs pruning and soil conditioning, I guess.
Yep. Now this is your twin. You can it's your data. You can put as much or as little information and context around it as you want. So scroll down, mate.
And it's easy to go back and add stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can log into an asset, just press edit, and then
Okay.
you won't need ID tags unless each of the trees are tagged in some way, and then you'll be adding them as individuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might want an image, but I mean, you know what an avocado orchard is. You probably don't need a reference image. Unlike when we imported those existing KML files, like if you had software for managing your grazing, like what many farmers do, you can usually download that from Maya or Agronomy or AgriWeb and then import them. So keep scrolling down.
Yep.
this is a location, and using the mapping functions. So have you done any mapping before?
I use Google Earth Pro,
That's good
so
start.
just playing around with that as my mapping tool, but that's about it.
Okay, you can see a plus and a minus, which is you zoom in and you zoom out. And then below that is 5 or 6 little tools. So the most useful tool is that tool at the top, the square, which is called the polygon tool. And if you click on it and then click on your map, you can define the area, which is the area of the avocado orchard.
Okay, well, I can roughly do that. Just how do I do that? It's about something like that. Oh, it should be bigger than that. Can I move it?
Okay, once you've created it, if you go to the square with 4 squares in each of their corners, which is the second from the bottom tool, that's an editor tool. So if you now click on that border, click on it, and then you can drag points around until they look the way that you want them to look. Yeah.
I'll just bring it out to about a hectare, which is roughly all it is. And there's a section over here, but I'll just do that. Yeah, let's just do 1.2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then scroll to the bottom of this page when you're happy with the shape and press save. Right, congratulations. You've just started to define the environmental assets of your farm. So the first one is a productive land asset, but let's go and create that creek and put it in as well. So over to records again.
Right, yeah.
And from records, you'll be asking what sort of asset? Water?
Water?
Yep. Now, water could apply to a dam, an irrigation piece of equipment, a channel, but in this case, we're going to use this permanent creek, I reckon. So top right-hand corner.
So add water asset.
Yep.
Yep. Creek.
Yep. You know, for those people who've got bigger farms, you might have a nomenclature of that creek, side creek, the name of a particular creek.
Do I say that or I've got to add it in?
You've got to still got to draw it in where it flows. Now, in this one, again, if you can, I would recommend a polygon rather than a line. Line it's just prone to breaking. So I'd try and do a polygon, which is that square tool, rather than a line tool.
That comes along here. Like that. Straight, which doesn't help in floods. That kind of turns into a dam type thing there, and it kind of goes through.
Oops. And if you just pull it across there.
Okay.
And when you're ready, double click, and that'll take you off that point. Okay, and then just go over to the toolbar and unclick there. No, your line one, and then you've got rid of the tool, so you're fine now. You can press save on that creek line if you want, or you can edit where that creek line is. The tool that you currently got selected is an editing tool, so you can edit anything you want. Yep.
That's good. I'll just save it.
Good job. Right. So let's have a look at some of the other assets. So there's this native habitat. Is it remnant or is it just recovered? Do you know how you would describe the other habitat that's on your farm?
Yeah, well, there is remnant. I would describe sections of remnant, and there's recovered. So ex banana or dairy, banana, tons of camphor through there, but lots of blue quandong, paper, sandpaper figs, red cedars that are coming through. So some older trees, thankfully gifting a lot of seedlings down there. So yeah, I don't know how to. I guess I'd zone some of that out, or
yeah, absolutely. Let's go and put some of that in. So I think your remnant veg would be of interest, and then your regenerating areas, like that's a great idea. So again, let's go put in that remnant veg area, go to records, add land asset, and we'll go and add a new asset.
Land?
Yeah, I'd go add asset,
yeah,
and add it as a land asset. We are going to get new asset categories, like documents can now be assets and habitats can be assets. But if you put in remnant veg or something that you'll know what that means.
I don't have the remnant. I don't know. Okay, and then draw it in.
Yep. Again, I'd use polygon tool.
Yeah.
I'd use the tool
that's
from
the
that.
line.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I mean, I used the line before.
That's all right.
Well, look, there's a section up here that's quite remnant. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I had the Tweed Council biodiversity guy come out here, which is a service Tweed offers. He had a good walk and saw a lot of cool stuff. If I edit that.
No, you're on the right editor.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, something like that. And look, and everything else is a mix. There's a mix of camphor and native. So, yeah.
That's fine. So Andrew, if you just go for me from on your scroll down to the bottom, press save so we don't lose that asset. And then records, assets, overview. Oh, we forgot to put it. So it'll be either a other, and you can say remnant veg, or a landmark, like that is the remnant veg, whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Save, yeah. Beautiful. So if you go now to records.
Yep.
And assets overview, yep. Oh, that's taking you to the dashboard. Yeah. So
assets overview.
Yes, there we go. It's not the world's most comprehensive list, but if you scroll to the bottom now, you're starting to see a bit of an inventory of your environmental assets being asked.
Yeah.
Now there's Andrew, Cameron, if it's all right with you, there's a really good question that's just come through from our in the chat. Anne's just asked about biosecurity issues and concept of the digital or the environmental farm assessment is that you do want to map your environmental assets, but I often think of biosecurity as potential environmental liabilities, and you could definitely map those as well. So if you've got an area of weed or an area of pest infestation, you can actually identify what that problem area is, include it on your inventory, and then add activities and observations that make it possible. Or as Anne pointed out, contamination from the old dairy. There's other areas that you might want to keep on your environmental asset radar, not because they're positive, but because their presence could be negative. They could be assets and
Yes.
liabilities
Sure,
that you
okay.
need to manage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, look, an example of that is the Madeira. There's some Madeira vine that sits on the edge of that remnant, which is whether it could take down a whole remnant forest that's been there for thousands of years, I don't know. But
it may
yeah,
well.
that's
So
an example of that.
what you've just done, though, Andrew, leads perfectly into adding an observation. So in record, instead of assets, we're going to go down to logs, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And in logs, there's two types of logs that we mostly use. One is activity and the other one is observation. So an activity is setting yourself a calendar date to do something with an asset. So that might be to go out and do a bird survey, or to go and do a transect, or to take a photo from a defined photo area mapping point. Or an observation might be exactly what you described. I was in this area and I saw this issue. So if you go into observation and click on that, in the top right-hand corner will be another big green button that says add observation log. Yep. And then the observation that we're going to make, if you just say the name of the weed, or however you'll remember
I never get the name right. Madeira vine, I never spell that right. Something like that.
It's like the drink.
Someone on there will know.
Or the region of Spain there.
Okay. Yeah.
And when you made that observation, like if it's in real time, you can timestamp it. You can then have like if you're looking at bird counts every month as observations, then you can actually, set these up and they'll be at migration times and not non-migration times.
Okay.
An observation you can set to other members on your team. So you can see there's Andrew Ward or Andrew Cameron there to choose from. Survey Stack, by the way, is the way we ingest data from the form. And so it's got an access to your twin so that we can add more surveys, collect more data, and it goes straight into your twin. Again, you'll see that there's lots of categories. So you can add a picture if you scroll down, Andrew, you can see you can add images, add files to the observation, and then you can locate it, the observation, either by the asset type. So you could type in your remnant veg area asset, or you can draw a new polygon where you made that observation. So using, I'll just so that's little cross there, and then I would scroll in to identify where you want to be.
Okay, so I could plot it roughly on the boundary, of course. I think the neighbour likes to mow and spread stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, so I could locate it roughly where it is with the polygon, you think, or just
polygon or point, either one, but I'd use polygon if it's rough, and point only if it's precise, I guess. Now, just a tip for your GIS, if you click on another line, it's going to bring up that line's name, like it just did for you. Yeah, sure. So scroll down and press save. And just like an asset, now you've made an observation log, okay?
Yeah.
Now, this isn't the last thing you can do, but while we're in logs, let's go set an activity log.
Okay, activity.
Big green button in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah. Add activity log. Yeah.
Now, what's an activity that might do on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis? You mentioned you were into holistic management. Do you currently get EOV, or do you currently do
No.
ecological monitoring?
No, I haven't got any any regular things yet.
No,
9 months in, it's still. I mean, look, an activity, especially after what we've just had. But I mean, look, I've got 10 Casuarina tuberoses which have got to go in. Is that? And I've just identified an area where that'll go. That's a forest oak tree, which is actually the main feed for black cockatoos. Nice thing to put in.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's an example. We could throw that in.
let's do that. So
Um,
that'll be the planting activity or revegetation activity.
Yeah,
And when is that going to happen in the
Probably
future? This weekend,
hopefully Saturday morning.
rain permitting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's currently pending, but when you do it, or when it's
Yeah.
done, you can mark it as complete. And here you might have some in your notes, right? Especially if you're assigning this to somebody else. This might be, or in the attachment, you might have a protocol that you want that person who's doing this activity to follow. So that protocol might be included as an attachment, right? I want you to plant them 1 meter by 1 meter grid, 5
Yep.
in a row, 2 rows. All of those sorts of instructions you can add to that. Okay.
Okay. Got equipment used. Yeah. So I guess I can save that. Oh, I'll point it out on the map.
Yep.
This is a bit old. Somewhere in here. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's popped up as legal boundary. That's not right, is it?
Just no, that's all right. Just click off the cross and then scroll down, and you'll be able to save the new activity. Yep.
Yep.
All right. Now, if you go back to your dashboard, by the way, this is great job. Go to the dashboard, and not unsurprisingly, now it's looking a bit more like a asset map. You've got your creek, you've got your remnant veg, you've got your avocado orchard. You've got a couple of land assets in there now, and you've got a couple of logs, observation and activity logs on your dashboard.
Yeah.
Yep. Now I'm going to take over for a second and run some of the tools for carbon biodiversity and native species over with you. I often find that it's easier for me to set that one up for you.
Okay.
But mate, I'm very impressed. Compared to some farmers, you can map better than me. And I love farmers, but a lot of them just sit there and aren't able to draw a polygon. So what I would say is good job. You've helped this be a much smoother process than I've seen in others. So good job.
Thanks, mate.
I'm going to take over the share screen. So I think everyone could see my screen now. Excellent. All right. So we're going to do, for the purpose of estimating your carbon. Now, we kind of know that within your 1 hectare plot, you're not going to be in any ERF project on 1 hectare economically. No. It's not what you want to do. But for the purposes of showing how our tools move someone through, basic understanding of their assets to a more refined understanding of their assets to a detailed understanding of their assets so that they can make a plan. I want to show you how our carbon biodiversity and other tools work. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a land asset called your carbon estimation area. And you might move this around, you know, a few different places and compare what's happening, especially if you've got a larger farm and you could do a project here or a project there. On your farm, we're just gonna, oh, piss off. See, I've done the same thing. I wasn't blowing smoke up your ass when I said you do a better job of mapping than me. I was being serious. So we're going to use that 6.8 hectares as a carbon estimation area. Then we're going to go, these integrations currently, Looksee is the only one that's built in and MyFarmKey, but Looksee is a carbon tool, but coming the LookB, FarmLab, Cool Farms tools, Hilo, obviously. So we've got a few more functions that'll come into these integrations. But what I'm going to do is go and use Looksee. I'm going to pull up the estimation area. Carbon estimation area. And I'm going to ask Looksee. So it's going to interrogate the polygon that we drew. And then it's going to compare the data that it can get from that polygon with all the previous ERF projects and with all the data that CSIRO have. And it's going to be able to tell you broadly how many ACCUs per year you would get for each of the different ERF methods. So your reforestation is the top one at 220 ACCUs per year for reforesting that area. Avoid
if it was cleared, for example, or
yeah, exactly.
Is that what that means?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So you still have to comply with whatever that ERF method is in order to get a project to happen. But this is such a rough tool. Yeah, you couldn't use this for anything like a transaction. This is mainly like a, you know, where do I have some potential across this, you know, across the ERF methods.
Okay.
So revegetation, avoided clearing. Interestingly, soil carbon, it's taking you from a very high base, like it's suggesting you've already got 4.9% carbon. And in this estimation, it's saying, well, if you increased 1%, went from 4.9 to 5.9 over 25 years, that would generate 32 ACCUs a year. Now, as an agronomist or as a farmer, what you want to do is kind of go, well, you know, let's make that 3% and going to 4%, and it'll still be 32 ACCUs per year. But let's also suggest that you could maybe apply some lime or apply a biofertilizer or apply a input at X cost per ton or hectare. But in doing so, you would hope to go from 1% to 1.5% carbon over 25 years. And you can then compare how many ACCUs you would generate and whether the cost of those inputs was worth the additional ACCUs, right? So
when you say cost, you talking financial cost or like obviously the carbon cost in producing those inputs?
Yeah, well, the cost of those inputs financially is what I'm meaning. So if you were to use a carbon calculator like Looksee on a rangeland cattle property, and you said, okay, over 1 year, well, over 25 years, if we increase 1%, it's X number of ACCUs, right? That's
Yeah.
the estimation. But I'd be interested because I don't just want to, increase soil carbon through graze planting. I actually want to take some of my cow shit from my dairy, or take some of my wood trimmings, or buy in some humus, or apply some lime, or use a biochar, or use a zeolite, whatever your practice is. We don't really care. Whatever your practice is that you then want to test, whether that will get you a corresponding lift in soil health and soil carbon, and will you be rewarded from it? You can start to test the gross margins of different enterprises, of different land uses, of different practice changes, and determine whether they're at first glance in an estimate form worth looking in more detail at, or not worth looking at that much more detail in. So I think I've confused you there. You've got a look of confusion on your face. I'll stop and stop sharing and ask you to talk to me. Yeah.
Just sort of thinking about the inputs, I guess, how, I guess I look at it from the angle of how you increase your carbon, because in some ways, you can go and get a whole bunch of compost and dump it on your farm, and a year later your carbon's up, right, through your organic matter. That was all. I mean, that's why my knowledge and experience with carbon is, I guess, from the grazing side, which makes sense. You move animals around, you can build soil carbon by following great practices that way. It's just a query on, the ways in that carbon increases, I suppose, because obviously, the inputs that create carbon emissions.
The ACCUs per year on soil carbon projects, and the cost of getting into a soil carbon project to establish your baselines and stuff, they're just nowhere near suitable for most of the East Coast escarpment. Rest of the Great Dividing Range, you can start, I think, to look. Maybe on the North Coast, like the far North Queensland, there's people converting out of cane into grazing and getting up to 8% soil organic matter, and they haven't yet turned that into ACCUs. But that's a really strong East Coast example. But most East Coast farms are just too small to warrant a soil carbon project. You're really into soil health.
Well, it's interesting because some of the farms I've worked with over the years, they've had huge increases, but they're on smaller farms. So I wonder if that makes it viable. I've seen sort of 2-3% as high as 14% in 5 years from grazing, because of the growth and amount of water we have, which is astronomical compared to inland. But it's one of those interesting things.
Rowan, were you going to say something, mate?
Just a couple of quick questions. Is this total ACCUs per polygon area or ACCUs per hectare per year?
It was for the whole polygon area, which I think was 6.8 hectares. So you'd have to take those 32 ACCUs and divide it by 6.8 to get your per hectare ACCU.
Alrighty. And one other quick question for new farmers who do not have experience: how do they know that lime or compost will work, and how what will the impact be on increasing carbon per hectare? Right.
Well, talk with your landscape agronomists and peers as to what practices or land uses are going to work in your context. I'm not going to stand by lime or anything until I understand the context, so I'm not recommending a particular practice. So you then have the ability, once you start testing decisions, do you want to use lime? Do I want to use zeolite? Do I want to use a biological fertilizer? You can start to understand the relative costs of each of those decisions and the relative potential returns. And then you can actually map the changes over time in your digital twin, which gives you the capacity to make more informed decisions. Which decisions you make, the mutual has no game in telling you how to run your farm, just how to record what you do, and give you some tools.
And the landscape.
Especially soil tests, starting with soil tests and stuff. I mean, yeah, to know where you're at before you think about inputs, I think, too. And yeah, as Andrew says, suggested, speak to peers and other farmers and what they've done. And yeah.
Is there another question from John Grant? Is there any possibility of smaller farms combining their carbon to make a saleable amount?
Yes, John. Absolutely. So one of the cool things that we think the Mutual will be able to do and is expose those small farmers on the East Coast escarpment that are too small individually to get into an ERF market, to participate in net zero programs within the Mutual. So we know that there will be some intensive broadacre farmers that are short on carbon because they've got high input fertilizers and diesel and other things. And along the East Coast escarpment, there might be many graziers, revegetators that collectively got more sinks than they've got emissions because they're a low intensity producer, but they're actively stewarding their soils and their trees and their vegetation towards more carbon. And we can use the sinks in aggregate from the East Coast to offset the emissions in other areas and then be able to provide a net zero without having to go into environmental markets and suffering arbitrage and, other actors. And basically we would hope that we can provide for those farmers that are supplying the carbon price that, is better than the ARF, and a price for those farmers buying the carbon within the Mutual, a price that's better than an external market, because neither of the transactions now have to go out through conventional markets with all the associated costs. So that's the plan, John, on the East Coast farmers that are too small, is to help them offset internally within the business. All right. What I'll do now is just return to your twin, and we're going to use a few more tools, Andrew, to have a look at your.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was Look C. Now, Look C has a baby brother called Look B. And Look B is again a CSIRO tool. It's currently not set up as an API. So what we're doing here is going to the actual website and bringing in the data for you. So one of the things you can do, Look B, is look at changes over the last 8 years. So you can define an area and you can then look back over time at the National Vegetation Index or other biodiversity indicators. So some of those will be tree height, etc. But if you're planning a change of land use, then you might be, for example, interested in is that spelt right? Barrington?
A BU.
Yeah. Oh, mate. Roughly speaking, where should I head out of town toward for you? Here's up Barrington.
Oh yeah, you can't see me. Yeah, so that big bare patch.
This one here.
And then there's that, you can see a ridge south of it.
South of it?
No, yeah, the other way. I'm not sure if I'm seeing a mirror. The
Yep.
screen sharing. Yeah, so that's, and if you come to the bottom of your screen.
Yep.
And then to the left, I'm seeing.
So go that way
Yeah.
or that way? Yep.
Down.
Down. Further?
further. Oh, lost it. Where it said Upper Bowen Bar, go back to that.
Yep.
Ophir Glen, keep going towards
Okay,
that.
towards there. Yep.
And down the bottom, yeah. You'll see that bare patch and up to the very left of the screen, or your right.
The left of my screen this way.
Yes, yep.
Yep.
Come on.
Yep.
I
And
think
you
we're
in
in
here
there
somewhere. Yes, here
Yeah.
you are. This is you, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
What we're going to do
Yes. Straight. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
for the purpose of this, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what would happen to biodiversity over that area under natural revegetation conditions. So estimate. Oops. Estimate. And it's going off, and it's already suggesting that this area is at 98% habitat condition, and that over the next 25 years, it will
Yeah.
basically have no biodiversity improvement left to natural regeneration. So given that it's
Okay.
starting at such a high point, I doubt environmental
Yeah.
plan will have much of a difference at all as well.
Uh,
So the look
Yeah.
B tool for you, not very handy. Let's go look at the native
No,
species.
it's already pretty good.
Yeah,
Hmm.
according to the government.
I mean, I would say it's more like 60% from walking, but that's yeah.
And again, you as the farmer have the context, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clunky tool, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh,
The
it's all covered. There's forest everywhere. It's just-
Yeah. Uh, sorry. All right.
Yeah.
And so we're down here. I think it was in here, wasn't it?
over the- yeah, where your mouse just was, I think.
Yeah, this sort of area. Yeah.
In here somewhere. Yeah.
All right. Again, we're using this as a rough tool because this is the protected matters search tool is looking at what protected species might be observed in your particular area. So we've just drawn an area, and if we ask it to explore, it's going to say there are 14 migratory species of national environmental significance that might go past yours. Most of them are birds.
Yep.
Also 3 ecologically sensitive communities, this coastal swamp oak, lowland rainforest, and 64 threatened species. And they range from vulnerable to endangered to critically endangered. And some
Yeah.
are reptiles, some are plants, some are birds. So what we're going to do is get those reports.
Yep.
And we're going to create for you a watch list, essentially, within your twin.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
asset, we're going to apply it to the whole farm. So I'm going to call it a land asset, but in time it'll be we're going to call this the species watch list. We're going to apply it
Yeah.
to the whole farm. And here we're going to pick up these files.
Oh, so you exported out of look B or whatever that one was.
Out of protected matters.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I've
Protected matters. Yeah.
taken it into your twin. and pressing save. So if we go back to your twin now, records, assets, overviews, you've got the same ones that you'd put in there, the land, the water, the structures, but we've also got this species watch list and a carbon estimation area that I put in whilst we were. Okay. Now I'm anxious about time and making this of value to people. So I'm just going to duck into this demonstration, if that's right, Andrew. So what we do from here, once we've got the environmental farm assessment, we can then start to look at what are the best things in your context that make the most economic and environmental sense. And we create a farm plan. And then you're proactively going into environmental transactions because it helps you to achieve your farm plan. Now, after this immediately, you'll get a report from me, and that'll, show who it was prepared by, who it was for. You'll obviously get your twin details so that you can go back in there. We'll run over the carbon and the biodiversity. We'll include your protected matters. But we also want to introduce you to your local opportunity and give you some instructions for how to continue to manage and evolve your twin. The important point, though, is from here, you don't have to go into a carbon deal to benefit from environmental markets or to benefit from having an environmental farm assessment. A lot of our farmers so far have been more interested after getting their environmental farm assessment of taking a step towards understanding their total sinks and emissions and whether they're negative, neutral, or positive, right? Because that impacts the farm plan massively. You might already have decided and you're going to plant some trees, so you might want to for a wind shelter or a bio link across your farm, but you're interested in understanding what the standing carbon opportunity looks like for you. Likewise, you might have already decided you want to do soil carbon, and you'll need to do baselining. Biodiversity assets can be explored both in terms of offsets. So as an example of an offset, out of those 64 odd species that we discovered in protected matters. I don't know, what's this type one? The white-throated needletail. If you made the observation of a white-throated bird on your farm, you could take it through iNaturalist, get it located and time-stamped, and then biodiversity payment calculator. Very North New South Wales North Coast, and you're Byron. Where's Byron? Well, call yourself Escarpment
Or Tweed.
or Tweed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this, this,
Let's call it the Escarpment.
Yeah,
It'll be that.
Sure.
And then let's call Byron Bay Dwarf. And we're going to put in one of those species. What was it? Hirodaptus cadactus.
White nose.
Yeah.
White-throated needletail. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So as an example, if you spot that and you go, oh, great. Well, that one's actually not listed for biodiversity offsets in your area. The concept is the same. That you add,
so you can list a species you've seen and then,
and then start to understand what their relative value for biodiversity offsets is. Now,
Right.
for biodiversity, when you're talking biodiversity, you'll generally be
Mm.
talking about biodiversity as a improvement over time. So you're looking at
Yeah.
changes to the density and complexity of species. You're looking at, we got more birds and butterflies and dung beetles and
Yeah.
more soil cover, you know, and that really comes out expressed as productivity. But productivity can also be improved through land use change, practice use change, or resource use change, changing from a nitrogen fertilizer to a biological fertilizer has potentially the same productivity increase in terms of N or bioavailable nutrition to the plant, but it might have a lower carbon footprint putting in a biological fertilizer than a synthetic fertilizer. And that can have a big change in a net zero world.
Yeah.
You might also want to do food and fiber or financing as things. So when we talk to your farm plan, we're going to need to ask things like, do you need to act on net zero? And what do you need to do? Have you got a positive, neutral, or negative situation in your farm? And then you can compare various regeneration opportunities and compare, you know, those actions towards understanding what is the gross margin and what is the funding model for each of those actions. And then which ones are susceptible to climate scenarios? And then how do I fit within my local landscape scale? How will I deliver the projects and the MVR? And how will I incorporate what I've got to do as a commitment to my environmental market transaction into the practices, including the activities that are described in your digital twin? And as you do that, you'll move through this probable environmental assets to proven environmental assets to verified and then ultimately sold assets. And so an example of that in carbon and what we could do next for you if you wanted as sort of part B to this would be look at originally the Cool Farm tool to do a sinks and emissions. And if that showed that you were net positive, neutral, or negative, you might choose to do a climate active, carbon neutral, and then you'll be able to sell, you know, whatever product labeled as carbon neutral. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're basically looking at ourselves as a farm. I mean, I guess I think of our own lives. I mean, I guess, you know, this is obviously, we're not looking to make money out of biodiversity as such. It's a, you know, first and foremost, it's production of food and so forth. But I guess what I'm loving seeing is sort of having so much data on carbon. And, you know, we might go overseas on a flight and look at, okay, well, actually, even by doing that, now activities of driving and whatnot, because of our activities on farm, we are carbon positives as humans on planet Earth, which is a good thing too.
That is huge, isn't it? Like guilt-free living.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I don't need to take, do you want to plant trees this flight? No, I've got my own trees.
Yeah. Just wanted to show that there's a few more things coming into the twin. Farm Lab, iNaturalist, Ceres Tag, Look See, Look Be, Cool Farm. All of these are about making it easier for you to collect information, analyze your different farm assets, and ultimately get them verified so that you can get either a market premium, a carbon neutral certification, or sell them as use or you know, whatever is particular to that farm.
Yeah.
You'll also now be added to the New South Wales North Coast group for high-low. We won't go into that now, but one of the cool things, as I mentioned, you've set your privacy to be basically, it'll say Upper Burringa is where your farm is, but not put an outline around your farm. But you and all the others here will have a shared map And you can layer on the NRM plans for certain regions, they're digitized. But either way, you can
Yeah.
layer on topographical maps and bush maps and NDVI maps, and you can start to share a discussion around, well, what could we do in a coordinated, collective way to make a landscape scale transaction happen? And one of those that seems obvious on that East Coast escarpment is, depending on where you are in the catchment, the valley or the coastal plains, there are different things that you can do, but collectively, farmers on the East Coast escarpment are about the only ones that have the ability through in the catchment to improve water holding capacity and slow down rainfall events and put in key lines.
Mm.
And then in the valleys to do biodiversity plantings that slow down water and disperse it where appropriate. And then in the coastal areas to stop inundation and flooding being as bad economically, directing water away from sensitive things like, Coffs Harbour sewage system or, river system on the Richmond, for example. Mate, I know that you might have more questions for me, but I want to give the opportunity to people to ask their Q&As. So at this point, we've got 20 minutes, so I'm going to throw it open to others if that's all right. You, of course, Andrew, are welcome to ask questions. It's your twin. But if anybody else has...
Yeah, sure.
Seems to be some in the accused.
No, we've talked to.
All right. Won't be long before it's finished.
Is the money coming?
Hey, Liz.
Hi, Liz, we can hear you. Oh, Liz, did you have a question? No? Yeah.
Not me. No, I was talking to Bob.
Okay.
It sounds like it's a really good thing. It's just another layer of work on, with all your accounting and when you're organic with your inputs and your outputs. But yeah, I query the thing of so much head space compared to hand space, like working with your hands in the soil.
And I think you're spot on, Liz. Like, none of this changes unless the on the ground changes, and that's all about practice use and resource use and what you're doing on the farm. The only thing this is good for is reflecting that in digital terms, and the reason we do that is most output in a farming situation, you grow a ton of wheat, you sell a ton of wheat, it leaves the farm. In an environment context, you don't want that stuff leaving the farm. So if somebody's, paying for habitat protection or carbon or protection of a species, they want to know that that species is in that tree is in that field, and that field is in that farm. And they need that expressed in data terms, because in reality, they're not buying the species out of the tree. They're buying the data that says the species is in the tree and the tree's in the paddock and this is where that paddock is. So we have to get kind of abstract and hands off, because that's the ethereal kind of abstract nature of these markets, is they don't leave your farm, they stay on your farm, but somebody else is paying you for them.
Yeah, I can value all that. And I think this is an amazing tool that should be used by the real estate industry, because real estate just doesn't relate to ecology. It doesn't put the value on the really important aspects of a farm. And those need to be appreciated before we get a cultural change in farming.
Absolutely. Liz, I really appreciate your starting the conversation, because others weren't so keen to put their hand up. So now that you have, Liz, hopefully there'll be some more questions from others.
Donna's got her hand up.
Donna, hey, Donna. You're on mute, Donna.
Right? Sorry, guys. Hi. Been
Hi,
at it
how are
for a
you?
while. But just with, you know, we've gone through the whole holistic management, monitoring. We're not on to the Maya grazing, but we're heading that way. And we've got young sons becoming more involved in the farm. This is a fabulous tool to know exactly where we are. But again, it's like a lot of things, you know, IT isn't our big thing. So it's that mentoring, like with the holistic management. So many do the training and then the training gets left at the gate. So I think that's really critical. You know, I think it's fabulous. Then it takes us to a whole different dimension that we can absolutely verify that our product, which I'm very on a bit of a journey at the moment to get clean food. So, you know, this helps us for the consumers and again, the marketplace, of course. So it's just that mentoring, I think, is what I'm getting at to, because we've all got other things to do, but it's almost like you need a uni student following you around to do all of this for you.
You definitely need a landscape agronomist, a trusted advisor for the farmers, and they're not long sessions. So I'll give you an example. We've done about 30 of these so far. And the one that I've just done with Andrew, that environmental farm assessment. And then we've maybe done a dozen follow-on assessments and already for those farmers that have just done the 2 sessions, they're almost at the point where they're like, one of them's ready next week to do their climate active, carbon neutral assessment. And so far their investment has been 2 lots of 2 hours.
Right. Okay.
And desktop work on their own.
Mhm.
But actually paying for the advice doesn't need to be expensive, doesn't need to be time intensive. In fact, once you've got the tool, your own context is sufficient information for you to try, oh, what if I did that? Or what if I did that? And check out the different scenarios. But yes, you do need a landscape agronomist because frankly, there's a lot of misinformation. There's an inundation of information. And if they can help you identify what's relevant for you and then help you to test that, then that's the goal of a landscape agronomist. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other people with questions? I can't see everybody's hand, unfortunately.
Question from the floor here.
Yeah.
This is from Heather. How secure is our information when we use these integrated tools to gather reports and estimates?
Very secure. So the technology itself, like security from hacking, is supported by Regen Digital and all of the cloud services that we use to host. When you do an API integration, which are what these integrations are, they go from endpoint to endpoint. So it's taking a specific set of data out of a particular piece of software and bringing it over into your twin. So your twin will now have that exact data set. And whenever it's updated on the other software, it'll immediately, because of the API, reappear in your twin. So data is really safe. What is difficult is we need to know what twins need to integrate with what software. And so when we get farmers saying, we want a soil sampling, we put in FarmLab. When we got farmers saying we want a cool farm tool because we want to estimate sinks and emissions, well, that justifies us putting in the API. But if there aren't enough farmers asking for a particular integration, that makes it difficult. And instead, what you're doing is sort of exporting a report, not an API and not a direct connection. You're exporting a report, copying it, and then uploading it again into your twin. And yes, that by its nature can have room where you're bringing it down onto your own computer, yeah, maybe then able to have it accessed by hackers or other people because you're on your own internet software, internet browsing, all those sorts of things that you do personally. Whereas an API is secure and the software itself, Regen Digital provides, is secure. So that, hopefully that answered that question, Heather.
And one from John Grant. I'm presuming that our own direct measures of above and below ground carbon can be directly incorporated in the system. And then second question, how do you validate that data? Good question.
Yeah. You can bring data into your twin, absolutely. How will you validate it? Depends whether you've got soil tests there or at the moment or not. And at least in below ground carbon, soil tests will be the primary way that you validate. Above ground carbon, like standing carbon, and the full cam method, there are fantastic tools like Flint Pro. Satellite data constantly. And what we're kind of seeing is that more and more sophistication is coming into data measurement around land use types. So we used to have like once a year a satellite go over. Now full spectrum satellites are going over every 10 days. So the amount of data, and a lot of that is public data that your twin will be able to access, is very useful for seeing change over time. Rowan, any more to add to that in terms of John's question?
Perhaps that one of the things the Mutual is trying to do, so we're by aggregating farmer interest and landholder interest, we're creating a market power. That's effectively, at the core of what we're trying to do. So the sole mission of the Mutual is to create value for its members. And the idea is the more members we have, the more market power we have. So that's, the various bits of infrastructure that we're building are all about leveraging that market power. And one of the things that we're looking to do is to drive down the costs of validating data and collecting data. So to talk to Wardy's example, we have a landscape impact transaction that's forming up in the west of New South Wales. And that's about regenerating wetlands. So there's a biodiversity corridor that we're starting with between connecting two rivers, and then the farms on either side going north and south. This is really important land. It's really important land for bird breeding. So it's like a foundational part of our breeding ecosystem actually across Australia. It's got they've got more birds than Kakadu in this region, and so one of the things we're looking at is how we go about reducing the cost of identifying the actions that farmers can take to regenerate their wetlands. And so we're leveraging a methodology there. It's called the rapid assessment methodology that's been used by New South Wales government for decades and it's been along stock routes. So it's credible, it's got history, and it will enable us to identify the actions that farmers can take to kind of fence off a wetland and what they might do for beyond that. Then, so that kind of identifies the actions. And then in terms of validating the data, so we've got, we're looking to integrate with quite probably downforce technologies, but there's others out there. But there's these various platforms that use satellite data to analyze ground cover, for example. And they've got history going back decades in some circumstances. But what we can do is mixing the rapid assessment methodology, which provides that on-ground practice change input in terms of this is the state. We can benchmark that using the satellite data going, right, that's the current state. That's the state as it was last week and last year. And if the farmer undertakes these actions, we can then use the satellite data to show how those actions are impacting that wetland over time. And by doing that, what we've done is we've combined the on-ground farmer-led kind of practice change with the technology driving the cost down so we can actually measure changes in biodiversity over time. And so that, if you compare that to something like or some of the other methodologies that are out there, like that require someone, an ecologist on farm for a couple of days to do transects here, there, and everywhere. It's clearly the cost difference is going to be immense. So that's just by way of example. One of the things that we're looking to do in terms of validation of data and collecting data is to try and find ways to blend this idea of what farmers can do collectively on the ground and either on a peer-to-peer basis, leveraging their landscape agronomist, and then what technologies we can use to then drive the validation price down, recognizing that ultimately that we're looking to find capital that will support these changes in practice. And so capital needs to understand, yes, that's a valid way of validating that data.
Thank you, Rowan. Mindful of time and really want to give Andrew Cameron value for the 2 hours that he's put together for everybody's benefit, but mainly, at this point, Andrew, I guess I've got 2 questions. One, how clear are you around your environmental farm assessment, and how confident are you to continue to use your digital twin? Yeah.
I think I've got a fair head around, the tools, I guess, how it translates into credits and stuff. That's where I get a bit confused. But maybe because I'm not looking at it in those eyes either. But I am very interested in getting the data clear on what we have as an environmental asset. So it's, there's plenty of homework, I guess, to have a play with that. And yeah, I get a good assessment, and the fact that you can look at those different species and that sort of stuff, which I find that really interesting and beneficial. And I guess for the position I'm in with this too is to get a good understanding of how this might be a form of production for farmers. I know how hard it is to produce good income from food. We're still working on that notion of getting the prices where they should be for what it is and what farmers deserve. So yeah, look, this whole area is quite fascinating at the moment. I think it's, naturally I have my skeptical side of it, sort of, I do worry that it becomes something, that we become environmental asset farmers rather than primarily, at the end of the day, it's looking after our land, it's feeding people the best way possible. But if this encourages people to go that step further in terms of looking after the environment, then we'll, of course, it's good to explore that. And for our, for this, our own personal farm, well, yeah, I think it's just going to be one of those things we look at a bit, just play with, and maybe be a good touch base in a month or so to go, okay, well, this is where I'm at, and get inside there and have a play around and understand those interesting predictive matters and those sort of things. And yeah, I guess it's another layer, isn't it? As Liz was saying, it's another layer. So, but that's where I have that space at the moment, because I'm trying to learn as much as I can within our tools of regenerating land, producing food, producing income for farmers, so that I can also help our farmers in our area, on that journey. So, yeah, I think it's great knowledge to have, and great that I can sort of play with my own live example.
Andrew, you're welcome. And if we do it in about a month's time, another session where we actually do your Cool Farm tool or do a greenhouse gas calculator for you, where we can look at the sinks and emissions of your household or business, and we can plug in and see whether you're carbon neutral, negative, positive. And then that's going to have one of the biggest significant impacts on, the decisions you make with respect to your farm. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about, isn't it? I just see this as an amazing set of information and data to hopefully make better decisions. And whether we down the track we end up producing an avocado oil
that's this glass bottle that we put it in is offset because we've got casuarinas out there feeding the cockatoos, or I don't know, I think that's, look, it can serve as a good marketing tool. It could serve as a good feel-good tool for us as a unit, for us as an operation to be able to say, yes, we are carbon positive. And I guess if you go down the path of selling credits, maybe that doesn't make you carbon positive, because now, you've obviously offset that to someone to pollute and whatever, but that's all the stuff you need to know to be able to make that decision. So, it's that base point of just getting all your information, and then, say, compare it to your own farm context and what we're trying to do. And that's, any farm, and people always say, what do I do? I don't know. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on what you're trying to achieve with your farm, and what life you want from living with land rather than on it. And
It's a very interesting time to be in farming. It's got so many different aspects to it, and it's wonderful that there's younger people coming in.
And imagine, Liz, if this was around, when you guys started your property, I should add, Liz, but, they transformed an entire property, 40 years in the making, and have added incredible biodiversity to their place, and incredible organic production of food. And, and this must be amazing to see this kind of thing now, Liz, after what you guys have done. I think,
well, it's rewarding to see, not only on farm, but off farm, how the attitudes have changed. Because when we were farming in the beginning, we were criticised by the green movement for being farmers. There was no understanding that farmers could actually be green, so it's come around. To people knowing now that farmers are the custodians, and if they're not green, we've got no hope.
No, but they still eat all their food, right? They're not growing their food. So I never understood that, slagging off farmers and running off to the supermarket. It doesn't make sense.
No, a lot of things don't make sense.
Andrew, Cameron, we must wind up because we promised people 12 till 2 and blowing through. I'll leave that in your capable hands. But before we do, I just wanted to say thank you for your generosity in sharing your personal onboarding experience with so many others. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries. I hope it helps.
Do you want to wind up then, and I'll stop recording when you've said the end? No, thank you, Andrew. That's all. Plenty to explore, and I just hope people got something out of it. And I'm sure Andrew will post questions later if you more as we explore this weird journey that it is. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Did I stop recording at some point earlier?